performing in Krakow, Martine Spaans from FGL.com and Tamalaki Publishing. Martine, the floor is yours.
Thank you. All right, welcome everybody. I see that we're a bit of a small crowd, so I'd like to say if you have any questions in between, feel free to interrupt and immediately interact. I think, the group size is small enough for that. Yeah, so today I want to talk a little bit with you about mobile retention and the types of sort of strategies and things you have to keep in mind to kind of optimize your retention for mobile games as you're designing. Slightly more about me. I've been in the industry for quite a while, not only mobile, but first it was like, online Flash games and all the portals where you could like play free Flash games. That's where I originally come from before I went into mobile. I set up my own publishing company, Tamalaki, about 4 or 5 years ago. And from the start, I've been focused on casual games, mostly for an audience of women 40 plus. So it's like hidden object, match 3, time management, puzzle games, word games, etc. In those 4 years, we've done more than 100 game releases. And back then, there was like really tiny, small games. And of course, gradually, we've been kind of going more and more towards big free-to-play projects. And then, of course, trying to keep players there, so optimizing our retention. So that's the knowledge that I'm going to share today. And I'm doing all this publication in cooperation with FGL, so they're my partner company, and they support me basically behind the scenes with all the publications. So I'm mostly going to be focusing on casual games today, because that's where my expertise is. And when I started working in the casual gaming space, this was kind of the slogan for casual game design: easy to learn, hard to master. However, nowadays, basically every game follows that rule. Even when you look at a game like Uncharted or Mobile Strike, they also kind of follow this rule, just to keep up with the ever-decreasing attention span of our audience. So nowadays, when I think of a casual game, I think more of keeping this in mind while designing. I can quit any moment, but I want to play for hours. Just to kind of capture your audience for hours if they want to, or if they only really have 1 minute, that should be fine too. And to understand how to apply this to the core thought of the game design, I'd like to look at several examples of how different media works with this. Not just games, I'm going to cover all types of online media. So Tinder, for example. In my opinion, this kind of has the perfect mix. It's a perfect cycle of engagement, immersion, and retention. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that game cycle now. So the 3-step loop. Step 1 is basically the core of your game design, where it needs to be like the part of the game that really needs to be interesting and captivating for your audience. This is where you kind of optimize your game funnel. Your tutorial, your core gameplay. Is it fun? And make sure that it doesn't become like a grinding chore. For example, a hidden object game, like many of that I do. It's surprising how people enjoy to see the same scene over and over again and try to find the same objects over and over again. But still, it's like a balance of offering the player just enough variety to kind of keep it interesting and turn it basically from a sort of eye training game to kind of spot items into a memory game. Like, can I remember where that item last time I had to find it? Step 2, the immersion. So that kind of means that in that step you have to give players the feeling of, I really want to complete this game. If a game only offers core gameplay, even though it doesn't matter how interesting you try to make, after a while it does become boring. So this is the part where you try to offer players a bit more with meta gameplay and meaningful secondary goals. So not just high scores and achievements, because there's only so much, there's only so much kind of, enough of an achievement feeling that you can get out of that. But this is also where we focus on, collections or, something that your social network within the game that you build up with other players, or your town that you're building up or something. And step 3 focuses on the whole what's new. So it's not just for your super fans who have played through your content and are just waiting for new stuff, but it's also to show other players that there is more and that there's constantly the game's being updated and that it's like an active game community, and that the exploring should never stop. This can also give players sort of an overwhelming feeling of like, oh, I've stepped into this gigantic game world where more and more is being added, and I should play a bit more to try to keep up with that. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about each single step in detail. Again, using examples also from outside the games industry. So tutorial and core gameplay in step 1 and the engagement step 1 should be really, really solid, and you should definitely spend a lot of time on optimizing and designing those. The first-time user experience, as you probably all know, is like extremely important because you lose 80% of your players within the first day. So looking at Tinder, it's a simple 5-step tutorial. But what I like most about the tutorial is to go through it, you already have to swipe. So you kind of already immediately get to kind of know the core mechanic of the game, the swiping. And again, there's that feeling of it's just endless. It's just picture after picture, and nothing is holding you back to just keep continuing. It's very easy and engaging that way. So to kind of pick up a game example of that, Clash Royale, it also keeps the core game loop really, really simple. And the tutorial only consists of 7 battles, where only the first one is really explained step by step. Only in the first battle, it's like, chewed out for you, like now do this, now do that. And even already in the second battle, you kind of have to start making your own choices. And gradually, during those 7 battles, more and more of the elements of the game get added. So after 7 battles, you really have the feeling like I know everything now and I'm battle ready. The fun of most games also is heavily dependent on like the social pressure. Clash Royale is a good example of that. But for example, another one is Words with Friends, where social interaction is really, really a vital part of the core gameplay loop. Also, kind of sucking people constantly back into that loop of like starting a new game, going through it, finishing it, rematching. And also to give an example of how I try to add this to my own games. One of my most popular game series is Hidden Object Home Makeover, where basically you're a home designer and a friend hires you to kind of clean a mess in his house and make something good out of it. So the hidden object levels are about sales, where you have to find certain objects in the room that people want to buy. With the money you earn, you can buy new furniture basically to sort of revamp your house. So the first one of that series was like really, really simple. And with the second and the third one already, we kind of try to add some extra elements to it. So we also added an element of quests and mini games to kind of keep it more interesting and to add some more variety and be a little bit different from the competitors. But we always kind of kept the core loop. That was really important, that we wanted that to stay the same because people really seem to enjoy that in 1 and 2. I'm, by the way, not very good at making flowcharts, so sorry if this looks like a mess. But it does show you that there's a lot more even in Home Makeover 4, which is like the last one of the series that we released, where there's all these extra things that you can do and extra things to keep people engaged. But it's still very clear that the core loop never changed, and so that's still the same thing that people seem to enjoy over and over again. The second step, the Immersion, the feeling of to give people like that they really want to complete the game. This is where we shift our attention from the core gameplay loop to the metagame, and this is where you try to answer the question of like what other reasons are there for people to keep on playing. So I already mentioned like collectibles, unlockables, social achievements, mastery levels. And to start again with an example of outside the games industry, I'm not sure if you're familiar with this app. It's the Wish shopping app. It's one of those apps where basically there's always more. when you start searching for something, and then you scroll through and you see related searches, you see related things. Kind of giving that feeling there's always more to explore. There's not just one rack of things that you could potentially buy. There's definitely more. It's what I call a rabbit hole app, because it really is down the rabbit hole. When I go into this app and I think that I'm going to use it to buy a commodity really, really cheap, and then I end up with so many things in my shopping app, and that's obviously how they make their money. So they're really masters of this. So it's a really good one to kind of study when you're looking to how to design to give players that feeling that there's always more. Pinterest is, by the way, another good one, where, of course, Pinterest, you just type in a search for a certain item, and then again, it comes up with all these suggestions and things that are related. And the last time I kind of tried it as sort of an experiment, I gave myself 5 minutes on Pinterest, and I started with the keyword bunny, and 5 minutes later, I ended up looking at pictures of Prince Harry. So it's it's a strange example of how an app kind of takes control of what you do and what you're looking for, and how it's very easy to forget time. And of course, a game that does this really, really well was Pokemon Go. So just 150 to collect. But when this is like your Pokédex and you've collected all these things, you probably the only thing you see is like, oh my God, I'm still missing so much. There's still so much to do. It's instead of like seeing an impressive collection, you only like focus on the missing gaps and like triggering that feeling like gotta catch them all, right? Have to have them all. And in our own games, we try to do this by adding a collection item. So Relic Match is basically just a match 3 game, but it has like a whole sort of detective mystery theme to it. And we focus on basically special items that randomly drop when people finish a level. And all these items, they then, in 5 different ones, they form a certain collection. And to turn in that collection, you have to, add some special items that you can get by trading with other players. And then in the end, you end up with like really, really special item that helps you to, basically, it helps you to kind of power up your game a bit. But we notice that people don't finish these collections for that special power-up item. They just finish these collections to have a whole row of, things that they collected, just to have that, again, that sensation of like, gotta catch them all. Then the third step, the retention. Again, starting with an example from outside the games industry, Netflix. Every time I open my Netflix screen, the trending, new releases, and recently added is completely different. Even if I open it like 3 times a day, again, every time what I see is different content. So it's constantly giving me this feeling like, oh, they're updating things. They're constantly adding new series, and there's always, there's not enough hours in the day to kind of watch all this. And I think that's exactly the feeling that Netflix is kind of aiming for, to give you that overwhelming feeling like, oh, I should just spend all day watching TV. But of course, for us game developers, that's not really a realistic way to kind of design our games. So to kind of do this, kind of trigger this feeling on a smaller scale, I'd like to look at Zodiac Pop. So it's a bubble shooter. But it's linked to horoscopes. So every day you can play a bubble shooter level and unlock your own horoscope, and then play another level and unlock your money, your luck, your partner's horoscope, etc. There's like a set of 5 or 6 different horoscopes that you can unlock every day. So it's a really, really easy way to lure people back to your app every day and having them play another level every day. But for this developer, it's not a lot of work to kind of keep that updated every day. They just sort of import a horoscope from one of those horoscope websites every day, and that's it. And then there's like a sort of an easy, maintainable way to have players come back. And what I also like about this is if you don't unlock your horoscope today, it's going to be gone forever tomorrow, right? Because tomorrow there's a new one. So it's not like, oh, I'll wait for a week and then I'll catch up. It's not possible. You have to do it every day if you want to know your horoscope. And in a simpler way, what we're doing with our own games is also time-limited content. So again, with Home Makeover 4, we got like Thanksgiving, winter, Christmas, Valentine's, spring, St. Patrick's Day, etc. So a lot of these events, they're really time limited. So people have like 1 week to finish like really difficult quests. Quests that basically they need about 5-6 hours at least to complete them. I'm always surprised when players email me 2 hours after the update. I'm done. Like, how did you? Never mind. Um, but yeah, it works to kind of get the retention levels back up, because before an update we see that maybe our day 7 retention is let's say around 20%, and right after an update it kind of shoots back up a little bit to like 25 or 30%. So even though it's small increments, it's definitely worth the development time of getting new quests in, and creating special creatives and artwork for the update. So, and then about the entire loop, there's I think also different things that we could focus on when it comes to the way to monetize. So for every step, there's basically a different strategy that you can look into for how to make money. So when you look at step 1, you're looking at like a subscription model, for example. When people really like your core, then and they want to come back for that, you could look into sort of VIP levels and things that make people feel special, and have them really sort of commit to your game. Or maybe your game design is more suitable to monetize in step 2 during the immersion. So invest into the unlocks. For example, Gamehouse does this pretty well with a fun pass, where sorry. So like a fun pass is also sort of a subscription-based model, but then it focuses on sort of the extra content that people get when they buy a fun pass. And step 3 during the retention, again, those updates, those time-exclusive updates, for example. If people don't have enough time to finish all those quests within that week, but they really want the special item that they can get after completing all those quests, then that is always the moment that people start spending more in-game gems and coins. And maybe your game that you're designing is more suitable to basically dive into that step of the monetization. Retention also has increasingly more to do with the attention span of players, or better said, the lack of it. Working in casual games for more than 10 years, I noticed that there's definitely decreasing kind of attention span when it comes to like loading screens or what to do for the next big achievement and stuff. So we're also playing a little bit more around with that. Whereas 10 years ago it was kind of okay to have people fail multiple times over and over again for a level, and they would still try and come back. Whereas nowadays, if people fail too often, they just go away and play another game. So we always keep in mind sort of the carrots and breadcrumbs strategy when we are designing our games. Whereas the breadcrumbs should drop easily and fast. Like, could be just if people don't, for example, if they fail a level, then at least they get some coins or some gems, just a little bit kind of extra to help them, or a free hint for the next round, to kind of still have that feeling like, okay, at least I'm making progress. I failed, but there's still a little bit of progress here. It could be things like daily quests or the amount of battles that they won. And the bigger goals, so the carrots in this example, there's the things like leveling up, multi-tiered quests, completing collections, upgrading. So to kind of give people that bigger payoff, like, okay, now I really did something. Now I really got somewhere. And often we also see that after a carrot is when people sort of end their daily session. Like, okay, I'm done for today now. I got this thing, so more tomorrow. And of course, these, the breadcrumbs and the carrots itself can also vary in size, but it's interesting to kind of play around with that a little bit. But yeah, it's kind of when we think of that strategy of, I could quit any moment, but I want to play for hours. This is also kind of what we try to keep in mind and focus on. And another kind of way to emphasize that is sort of the, waves, as in like designing your levels as in waves. There's bigger ones, there's smaller ones. For example, looking at Candy Crush, there were a few levels that are like absolutely notorious for being ridiculously hard. And then always after one of those hard levels, there's like an easier one. So you got that feeling like, okay, I finally got that level done. And then there's a few that are like easy peasy, not to kind of immediately get you back into the action again. This is, however, very typical for Western game design, whereas I noticed that Asian gamers do prefer to have things like gradually get harder and harder. Right. So yeah, like I said earlier, in the mobile gaming industry, day one drop off of 80% is kind of more or less accepted. And then I'm even already, only talking about uninstalls and, not counting yet the people that just install open and then leave it unopened for another week. So, it sounds pretty bad, but then thinking of it, compared to the online shopping industry where, they lose 40% of their visitors within 10 seconds after they landed on the app or web page. So, keeping that in mind, our day one retention is not that bad. However, if we've come to accept that we only do retain those 20% of users, then at least we should try to really make an effort to really keep those 20% and keep them extremely happy. Keeping these kind of core game design mechanics in mind. And like many times I just talk to developers about retention mechanisms, and they say things like, well, we'll just implement some high scores or some achievements and push notifications. And thinking back of step 2, the immersion, I'm like, is a push notification or just an achievement really going to give players that feeling like, oh, I will really want to complete this game? So, kind of keeping that in mind, one final thought to basically walk out with is that retention should definitely, for your game design, be more than just a push notification or a retargeting campaign. It should be really part of your free-to-play experience in your game design. And that's already it, and I think we have plenty of time for questions. Thanks.